اللهم إني أسألك الفردوس الأعلى من الجنة. اللهم إني أسألك الفردوس الأعلى من الجنة.
The first topic, rewards for women in paradise. It's a deep topic. And to cover it properly, we must institute certain guidelines and certain frameworks and rules. The first of them is that whenever we discuss matters of ghaib, matters of the unseen, we must always discuss it from a neutral standpoint. Neutral in the sense that we are only narrating that which we know to be true. So what is it that we as Muslims value and know and adhere and believe to be true? What are the masdar? What is the source of truth that we as Muslims build our aqeedah, belief upon? First, it is the undeniable true words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Quran. Second, it is the authentic sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And this word authentic is extremely important. And third, it is the proper interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah, not according to one particular individual, not according to one particular segment or generation of society. Rather, it is the interpretation that is agreed upon by those who came in the past and those who are living in the present, and the same thing that will be agreed upon by those who come later on, which is the known understanding of Ahl as-Sunnah wal-Jama'ah. Rewards for the women of paradise. That's the first guideline. That what we will say from here on in is always, you're not going to hear Yahya say, this is what is in paradise, or this is what it means. That will never be uttered by me. Second, is that we must understand the life in the hereafter is different in mode, in appreciation, as a whole complete system, as a whole complete new beginning. It is completely different to what we experience in our worldly life. This is extremely important. It is one of the foundations that the people of Sunnah build our aqeedah upon. So therefore, when you hear me say, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that in the Jannah there are trees that have talh. Talh can be translated to bananas. Now you're not going to think, because you're not allowed to think with your own simplistic framework and the way you are thinking in worldly terms, a banana is that yellow object that tastes in this sort of way. That is something that you must distance yourself from whenever you speak of matters of the unseen. How do we know that this is a piece of paper? I'm going to give you an example. How do we know that this is a piece of paper? The word paper, P-A-P-E-R. Why does that represent this object? It's the association that we have made to it. Meaning, if I go to China, to the heartland of China, to a city where no one speaks English, and I say to them, this is an orange. And I repeat it numerous amounts of time, and I say, it's an orange. What will they believe when I point to this? They will say, answer, it's an orange, right? The associations we make are based on what we've been indoctrinated in. When we think of the akhirah, because we have not yet been given that representation, we have not been shown that this is what talh refers to. The banana, it isn't what you see in the worldly life, it's different. How do we understand this? All the matters of ghaib are in the same way. The names and the attributes of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, He is Ar-Rahman, the most merciful. When you think in worldly terms of what mercy is, you have specific connotations that are attached to it. But when we understand the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it is different than what we can comprehend, what we can rationalize. And therefore this is the very first most important argument you understand. It is what totally obliterates the modernist movement who have tried to creep into Islam. They will say, how could you believe that such and such? How could you say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sees, or that He hears, Sami', Alim, or that He has knowledge? How could you say this? These are human characteristics. Well, we say to them, that watch, that clock has hands, right? I have a hand. Is my hand. The same word represents two separate things. So therefore the representation is extremely important. So the things that you will hear in our discussion, this is a long introduction by the way. Things you will hear in our discussion regarding the rewards of paradise have to be put in that framework. You cannot understand it. Not because I say it, but because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam says it. What does he say? I introduced this topic, rewards for women in paradise, by narrating to you a hadith, which is narrated by Abi Hurairah, and it's collected by Imam Muslim, which is in his Sahih book. It's a hadith that is authentic. The Prophet ﷺ says, سَأَلَ مُوسَى بْنِ عِمْرَانَ رَبَّهُ. Moses asked his Lord, Ya Rabb, ma adina ahlul jannati manzila. Oh Allah, what is the lowest reward that is found in paradise? What's the bare minimum? Minimum wage, right? What is it here? $5 an hour? $5.15? Minimum wage. What's minimum wage in Jannah? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala answered Musa and said to him, it shall be given to a man, رجل, يجيء بعد أن دخل أهل الجنة الجنة وأهل النار النار. It will be given to a man after all of the people who have deserved paradise entered it, all of the people who have deserved the fire have entered it, and this will be the last Muslim man. And this is an important hadith that proves that a Muslim who sins, who may not receive the complete, all-absorbing, absolving forgiveness of Allah immediately, will eventually exit the fire and enter Jannah. This will be the last of humanity to escape the fire. Wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَفَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ. The one who narrowly escapes the fire. وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةِ. And is given admission to Jannah, فَقَدْ فَازَ. Has attained all success. And the word faz is nakira. It's left ambiguous. It's so that you can, success, it's measured in so many ways. But it's given as a nakira intentionally by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's not limited. It is success unbounded. فَقَدْ فَازَ. So Musa is told there's a man who will exit the fire and be brought to Allah to be the last person to enter the Jannah. Allah shall say to this man, عَبْدِي أَتَرْضَى أَن يَكُونَ لَكْ مُلْكٌ مَلِكٌ مِنْ مُلُوكِ الدُّنْيَا. My servant, do you wish, would you be content to receive the kingdom of a king who lived on the worldly life that you used to live upon? Let us pause with this statement because it's important to understand that after your worldly life comes to an end, your days of asking Allah, of turning to Allah and saying, oh Allah, grant me, are over. You will never again ask as a believer Allah to grant you anything. It will be Allah who asks you. There isn't a single verse in the Quran or a single hadith wherein Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that you will say, oh Allah, I want more of this. It's always Allah that will say to you, Atarda, is it sufficient for you? In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah shall come to the believers who have entered the Jannah and shall say to them, هَلْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ أَزِيدَكُمْ. Is there something you wish for me to increase you in? And you and I shall say, أَلَمْ تُبَيِّضْ وُجُوهَنَا. Have you not brightened our faces? Tubayyid does not mean made us white, right? Have you not made us white, as I've seen in some strange translations? Tubayyid, the word brighten. How does Allah describe a person who is darkened? ظَلَّ وَجْهُهُ مُسْوَدًّا وَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes those from amongst the non-Muslims, when they were given bushra, that when they were told, you have a new daughter who's entered in your home, he would immediately darken in his face. He would be upset. The wrinkles would form. He would darken in his face. That is what is meant. Tubayyid means you're in a state of tranquility. Alam tubayyid wujuhana وأدخلتنا الجنة, and you allowed us to enter Jannah. وأنجيتنا من النار, and you saved us from the torment of the fire. They think that is the greatest reward. We will come back to this hadith later on in our segment to show you what is the greatest reward that a human being shall experience. We return to the hadith of Musa. Allah shall say to this humble servant who has been punished, who may have committed sins but has been purified. Allah shall say to him, are you content to receive the kingdom of a king who lived on your worldly life? The person obviously shall say, Na'am, Bala. That's enough for me. A king. Think Prince Charles, Buckingham Palace, a king. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shall say to this